Hi, and welcome back to the show. Today I feel very fortunate to sit with a wonderful musician and composer, Phil Grenadier. How are you?
I'm very well. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
The same. Well, growing up in a musical family in San Francisco with your two brothers, Larry and Steve.
Yes.
And your father. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your upbringing?
Of course, yeah. I was lucky enough to have a musical father, and he played trumpet. He loved music, incredible jazz fan.
And I understand he tried to get all of you kids to play trumpet at first.
Exactly true. So I think I was 7 or 8, and all my brothers are like a year apart. So I was, say, 8, and my middle brother Steve was 7, and Larry was 6. We all played trumpet. And my dad was super encouraging and taught me a lot about playing the trumpet that I still remember today. And my brothers came to their senses and switched to other instruments, which was good for them.
Because you were too hard to beat.
I was older, so yeah, maybe, but they switched to guitar and bass pretty shortly thereafter.
Well, we must have said they have done pretty good.
I think
not
so.
Playing and we must say that Larry Grenadier, as most people know of, from Brad Meldau and a lot of our setting, you also played with your brothers.
Yes.
In high school, and you had a band. And
we did. In California, we grew up in San Francisco, and many jazz festivals and, competitions as young people. And I learned so much from growing up with them because we influenced each other, and we shared our record collections, and they told me about what was corny on the trumpet. So they said, don't do that, So it was very artistic in a way. Not in a heavy way, but we were all, trying to get better, and we had great teachers as well. My dad made sure that we had good instructors at a young age, so I'm very thankful for that. And but he loved music, and I think he transmitted that to me.
So how was the scene in San Francisco when you grew up? I know you had the Keystone Corner, for instance.
Yes. Oh my God, that's my earliest jazz memories, and I just loved It changed me. The vibe of that club was so intense and cool. And
what is your first musical memory from Keystone Corner?
Good question. I saw a lot. I saw Art Blakey many times with his bands. Probably the first band might have sung with in the early '80s with Valerie Panamaroff and Bill Pierce and Bobby Watson. Then I saw when Wynton Marsalis hit the scene. Was still Bill Pierce, and maybe his brother came along. It was first Bobby Watson, I think, with Wynton. And then I saw Freddie Hubbard and Woody Shaw. And I remember seeing a free jazz show that my father was kind of horrified about, but it had an impact on me somewhat. It was a guy named Tim Rosenkrantz, who might be a European clarinetist or something. He might be famous, and a guitar player named Ryo Kawasaki. I don't know these guys so well, but it had an impact on me. I didn't even understand it, but it was so spiritual. And on the breaks, they'd play Coltrane, and they'd serve falafels. All these things were like new to me as 18 years old. My dad took me to shows, took me to see Freddie Hubbard at the Great American Music Hall. Great memories.
So was it already set? I mean, you grew up, your father playing trumpet. Was it already decided that you're going to be a musician, or when did you find out that? I mean, most people want to be a fireman or whatever.
Yes.
At that age, when was it that you decided, I'm going to be a jazz trumpet player?
That's a good question. My father was super supportive until a point, and then when I got to college age, he said, you need to follow in my footsteps and have a more secure something to fall back on. And so my dad was involved in real estate and, kind of business. He worked for a bank, and so he wanted me to do that. So it was a bit of a struggle for me to do that. As soon as I graduated high school, my dream was to move to go to New York, and I did for a summer, 3 months, and that was an issue with my father. So we had kind of a falling out. But I had decided, and I had a trumpet teacher, John Coppola, who just passed away, who was another huge influence on me. And he was so encouraging, and he wanted me to go to Juilliard. So it was like, he was like, not my father, but there was a back and forth, and so I struggled with that, but I knew I had to play. So I did that, and I moved to New York after San
So
Francisco.
1988, I suppose, you moved to New York.
Exactly.
And was it in search for a bigger city, more musicians to play with? Because I know already 16 years old, you were as a sideman with Mel Torme and a lot of big names at that.
Well, San Francisco was great at that time. I think it was still not in its heyday, but it was a lot of work. So I could work 30 nights a month. When I left for New York, I was working like crazy, and it was a venue. It was the Fairmont Hotel, which is a beautiful hotel you've probably seen on TV, perhaps. And the Venetian Room was a nightclub that had music every night. So I would play. You could play with Tony Bennett, you play with Ella Fitzgerald, and George Shearing, and people like that you mentioned, and then some rock stuff too, playing with Carlos Santana and interesting people like that. So it was
James Brown,
that was Venetian as well. So there was a lot of music going on, but my trumpet teacher also had me doing more commercial work, literally commercials where we'd play a commercial for the Gap, selling clothes.
Right.
So I learned so much, and then I had jazz influences as well, people that put me in their bands. So it was very busy. But I knew that I wanted to move to New York because I wanted to be I knew it was the best place in the world for me.
Of course, there is no number two. So moving to New York, of course, now it's a bigger pound to play in.
Yes.
And how was that move? How did that shape you?
It was great. I didn't study music in school, so for me, going to New York was school, and so I just jumped in. I had saved, because I was working in San Francisco, I saved $50,000. So I said, okay, I'll move to New York. $50,000 in New York goes pretty quick.
Right.
But it allowed me to just go out and hang and hear all the players. And at that time in 1988, Miles Davis was still alive, Woody Shaw was still alive, Dizzy Gillespie was still alive. So I go see these guys all the time, and to me, that's like the best lessons in the world. So inspiring. And New York is great because it makes you learn instantly what you don't know, what you don't have. So it was like obvious, all the work I had to do.
So what motivates you, Phil? You've been playing since you were a little kid. What motivates you to pick up that trumpet and to work on it and to work on your compositions and keep on doing it day after day?
It's a constant challenge. The trumpet is a challenge. Tonight will be another challenge, But you just, like anything, or not everything, but the beautiful thing about it is we just try to get better every day. And we stay at it. And sometimes we feel like it's not going as well as we want, but there's something just in the attitude, the love of the music, getting to play with Jerry Bergonzi and people like that are just so amazing to play next to. It's like they're role models for me, so it's obvious what I lack and need to work on. So the next day I always feel like obvious what I need to work on.
Right. Well, you have a few solo CDs with people like Kurt Rosenwinkel is on it. You've been on more than 50 recording as a sideman. I know you've been playing with a lot of constellations, Jerry Bergonzi and all the other people that we mentioned. I know that all of them are important for you, but were there some setting or some constellation that meant a little extra for you?
Well, playing with Jerry is amazing, right? I've learned so much in maybe the 10 years I've been with Jerry, so I've learned so much about everything about myself, and he's a great role model for me. Just how he's a tireless searcher in music, always working. The other person I guess that would come to mind more recently is John Schofield, working with his band for 2 years. And it was basically John and
Steve Swallow
and Bill Stewart. Right, so those guys, again, role models to be around, and great human beings. And, we travel very hard like we did today. And those guys, no matter what, they come to the gig and they play at the highest level, no matter what. And that to me is, I hope to achieve that someday. I try, but I don't achieve it as much as I want to.
Right. Well, of course, playing with all those people that you got to be always at your top level. Saying that, where is Phil Grenadier 10 years from now?
Oh, good question. Well, I'll be getting old by then. I don't know. That's hard to say. I mean, I've been in Boston now 20 years. I grew up in San Francisco. I lived in New York for 8 years, and now I've been in Boston for 20. So almost half my life, East Coast, West Coast. Part of me would love to go back to the West Coast just for lifestyle. But it's not the most healthy music scene. So I feel great that I'm in Boston now getting to play with great players. To live in Europe is not impossible either, you know? It's hard for me to say. There's a lot of... I guess I'm lucky that I'm very free. I don't have children, I don't have a wife, so I can live anywhere, and that's a good thing for me. So it's hard to say where I'll be in 10 years.
What advice do you have for the other musicians out there? It's a tough profession we're in, and what would you say? It could be either professionally or musically for practice, or just spiritually. What advice would you give to musicians out there?
Good question. Well, for me, I say keep an open mind. You know, some things that we think, like when I was young, I had these very strong opinions, and as time went on, I didn't necessarily feel the same way. Or music I didn't like, now I love. And thing ebbs and flows, and things that I might have loved 5 years ago is not so important to me. So I guess just, you know, I mean, you have to trust yourself and go with your passion and just try to keep a high standard, you know. Take care of yourself physically, emotionally, and try to be the best musician you can.
That's some great advice. Phil Grenadier, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and looking forward to see you soon again.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.